Introduction to the Acts of John, from the Apocryphal Acts of Paul, Peter, John, Andrew, and Thomas, by Bernhard PICK. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Part 3. The Acts of John. Introduction. The Acts of John, which have been made use of by the author of the Acts of Peter and Thomas, belong to the 2nd century, perhaps to 150 to 180 A.D. According to Nicephorus, the Acts of John comprised 2,500 stikoi, or lines, or about the same space as our present Matthew Gospel occupies. Unless there is a mistake, we have about 2/3 of the whole, and it may be said that of all the Gnostic Acts, these seem to have left the greatest traces on church tradition. As author, the name of Lucius is generally connected with the Acts of John, for he seems to have been a companion and an attendant on that apostle. Several traditions concerning John, which are mentioned by very early writers, agree so closely with what we know to have been told in the Gnostic Acts as to favor the idea that these Acts may have been the original source of these traditions. But this account cannot be given of all the stories told about this apostle. For instance, the beautiful story of John and the robber appears to have been derived by Clement of Alexandria from some different source. For later Christian writers, who show independent knowledge of other things contained in the Lucian Acts, appear to have known for this story no other authority than Clement. The Lucian Acts came under discussion at the Second Council of Nicaea in 787. They had been appealed to by the iconoclasts. In order to discredit their authority, passages from these Acts were read to the council to exhibit their heretical character. The Docetism of the Acts comes out very plainly from this evidence. John is related as informing his disciples, among other things, that when he tried to lay hold on our Lord, it had sometimes appeared to him to find solid substance, but not at other times. This passage is evidently alluded to by Clement of Alexandria, who states that he read in the traditions that when John handled the body of our Lord, it offered no resistance, but yielded place to the apostle's hand. This is one of the reasons for thinking it possible that these Acts may be as old as Clement of Alexandria. But it is probable that the Acts of John were in circulation before the time of Clement. Zahn dates the Lucian Acts of John as early as 130. Lipsius places them 30 years later. Like the Acts of Paul, those of John no doubt originated in Asia Minor. The Acts as we now have them are not complete. They commence with chapter 18 and narrate, roughly speaking, 1. Arrival and first abode at Ephesus, chapters 18 through 55. 2. Return to Ephesus and second abode, the Drusiana narrative, chapters 58 through 86. 3. The life of Jesus and his trance, chapters 87 through 105. And 4. The end of John, chapters 106 through 115. For this matter, besides the manuscripts, together with the Acts of the 2nd Nicene Council, Bonnet made use of a number of manuscripts, which he mentions in the preface. Besides these manuscripts, use has been made of the work of Abdias, the reputed author of a collection of apocryphal Acts of the Apostles. This Abdias, claimed to have been the first bishop of Babylon, is said to have written the deeds of the apostles in Hebrew, which his disciple Eutropios translated into Greek, and the historian Africanus divided into 10 books. The work was edited by Wolfgang Lazius, Basel, 1551, and often reprinted. The 5th book of Abdiae Babyloniae Episcopi et Apostolorum treats of John, and contains matter which seems to belong to the original Lucian Acts, and is of greater importance for the reconstruction of the text than the Life of John, composed in the first half of the 5th century by a certain Prochorus, a supposed disciple of John. Prochorus no doubt perused the Lucian Acts, as can be seen from a comparison of 2 manuscripts, Q, 11th century, and V, 12th or 13th century. The narrative of Prochorus is a Catholic revision of the Johannine legend. It was first published by Michael Neander in an appendix to the 3rd edition of his Greco-Latin edition of Luther's Smaller Catechism, Basel, 1567, and is now accessible in Zahn's edition. The beginning of the Acts, chapters 1 through 14, which describes John's journey from Ephesus to Rome and banishment to Patmos, which Bonnet puts at the beginning, and chapters 15 through 17, which describe John's return from Patmos, and which Bonnet puts below the text, may contain some original matter, though nothing certain can be ascertained for the present. These chapters were formerly published by Tischendorf. For the benefit of the reader, we give these chapters as they are found by Bonnet. End of Introduction to the Acts of John.